Okay, we're going to look at discrete probability distributions. Okay, by the conclusion of this lesson, you will be able to identify the characteristics of a probability distribution. You will also be able to construct a probability distribution and interpret one. So, what is a probability distribution? It is a listing of all of the outcomes an experiment and the probability associated, a listing of all the outcomes of an experiment and the probability associated with each outcome. Okay. So, characteristics of the probability distribution: the probability of a particular outcome is between 0 and 1 inclusive. The outcomes are mutually exclusive. The list of outcomes is exhaustive, so the sum of the probabilities of the outcome is equal to 1. And I know that this is a lot to take in, and we're going to look at it all again on the next slide as well. And something that you can do with a probability distribution. Okay, so say you have a probability distribution that claims a drug manufacturer claims that a treatment will cause weight loss for 80% of the population. This claim can be tested by a consumer protection agency with a sample and statistical inference, and by creating a probability distribution with real data. Okay, so probability distribution example. Suppose we're interested in the number of heads showing face up with 3 tosses of a coin. We can, using the counting formula from chapter 5, we note that there are 8 possible outcomes when tossing a coin 3 times, since you will observe either a heads or a tail. In other words, there's 2 possibilities. And this toss is repeated 3 times, so 2 multiplied by 2 multiplied by 2 equals 8. Okay, so the probability of heads in the first one is 0.5, probability of heads in the second one is 0.5, probability of heads on the third toss is 0.5. You multiply all of those together, and the odds of you, or the probability of you getting all heads, which is down on the very bottom, is 0.5 times 0.5 times 0.5. But then also the 2 times 2 times 2 gives you the entire sample space, if you will. Okay? So this is the probability distribution. The probability of a particular outcome is between 0 and 1. And the outcomes are mutually exclusive. Notice here, though, I don't yet have the probabilities. Okay? We'll get to that in just a minute. So, but these outcomes are mutually exclusive. Each one of these outcomes is different. So you've got a total of 8 possible results with different outcomes. Okay, and this is completely exhaustive. None of these are the same, but there are no more than what's listed here as these 8. Okay, so the probability distribution table notes, the number of heads. You can either have 0 number of heads, 1 number of head, 2 number of heads, or 3. Okay, in the previous, you can see that the number of times that heads occurred 1 time was 3. Okay, so 3 out of 8 times heads occurred. Okay, the number of times heads occurred 0 times was 1 out of 8. The number of times heads occurred 2 times was 3 out of 8. And the number of times heads occurred 3 times was 1 out of 8, which I was talking about before, which is 0.5 times 0.5 times 0.5. And so you add the fractions together: 1/8 plus 3/8 plus 3/8 plus 1/8, or the occurrences. You've got the occurrences divided by the total number of occurrences. So the occurrences of the desirable outcome divided by the total number of occurrences, which gives you the probability. You add all the probabilities up, it gives you 1, because there's a total probability of 1. And then finally, you can put this into a bar chart, and you can see that 0 heads will occur 1 out of 8 times. one will occur, one head will occur 3 out of 8 times, 2 heads will occur 3 out of 8 times, and 3 heads will occur 1 out of 8 times. So that is the conclusion of the lecture on the probability distribution table. Make sure that you have the total exhaustive the total exhaustive list of possibilities. Make sure that you have the fraction, as in the number of desirable outcomes over the total number of possible outcomes. And then you have the actual probability listed, and then you have the fractions that add up to 1 and the probability that adds up to 1. If you have any questions about this, feel free to post it on the discussion board, and I'll get back to you as soon as I can.